It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman. It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I am your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. This show is brought to you by Audible.com. You go to audibletrial.com/Opperman Report. You sign up for free. You get yourself a free audiobook. Tonight we are live on TalkSuperstation.com, Public Streaming Radio Network.com, Awake Radio US, Awake Radio UK, WolfSpiritRadio.com, 1800 online, Shazaz Radio, Just Us Radio Network, Scottish Sovereigns on the Land, My Radio Stream, listen to on TuneIn.com, on Spreaker.com, and also on iHeartRadio. Then we're going to be replayed this week on High Point Radio, 1700 AM, 100.5 FM in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. Will be replayed Monday morning on Penny Entertainment, Blog Talk Radio. Will be replayed Monday on Saturday. Talk Superstation plays us Saturday mornings as well. Cave Radio Broadcasting plays us twice a week. Saturday evening, 7 p.m. You can find us on Para X Radio. That's a CBS radio station. And then we're replayed again. Tuesday afternoons, late night in the Midlands. Wednesdays, Firehorse Network. Every single day, 10 a.m. to 10 a.m. in the morning on FPRNradio.com. You can find us, and you can find us now too on Stitcher.com, StitcherRadio.com, as well as iHeartRadio on demand. We got a really big show tonight. Really, a guest that I've been really trying to get for a while now. He's Richard Lambert, retired FBI agent in charge of the Anthrax investigation. And we only have him for an hour, so I want to get to him right away. Mr. Lambert, are you there?
I am here, Ed.
Thank you so much. So tell us about yourself and about your background and your career in the FBI.
Well, I started out my professional career as an assistant city manager and then went to law school. I practiced law in Austin, Texas for a couple of years, practicing administrative law, representing cities and towns and municipalities before the regulatory agencies there. And then in 1988, I joined up with the FBI as a special agent, served with them for 24 years, and was fortunate to spend the last 6 years of my career in Knoxville, Tennessee, as the agent in charge of the Knoxville field office. But as you mentioned, prior to that, from 2002 to 2006, I served as the inspector in charge of the FBI's investigation into the Anthrax attacks of 2001.
Yeah, that's pretty much why we brought you on the show, because just recently you had to file a lawsuit against the FBI, and pretty much you're saying that the FBI's investigation into the Anthrax crime, which is a serious crime where several people died, is a seriously flawed investigation.
Well, the information that's in my complaint, the legal filing, is in there for a reason, and that is to help the court understand why it is that the FBI would issue a legal opinion concerning me that has no basis in law or in fact. And my complaint in federal court contends that the FBI issued this legal opinion about me in retaliation for a prior whistleblower complaint that I filed in 2006 outlining a number of performance derelictions with regard to the management of the Anthrax investigation. Now, that whistleblower complaint was never intended to become public. It was filed within the Department of Justice and was simply intended as a recitation of lessons learned so that when the next biological WMD attack comes along, we don't repeat some of the same mistakes that were made in the Anthrax investigation, which was codenamed AMERITHRAX, is the name that you may remember. So it is indeed unfortunate that I had to include that information in there, but I do believe that that prior whistleblower complaint was ultimately the basis for the legal opinion that the FBI issued after my retirement, which caused me to lose my job with the Department of Energy that I was working for. So all of this, unfortunately, comes to light unintended on my part.
Yeah, but I think it's a good thing that it has, because now that we hear these things, I think the public is very concerned. The people that have heard about this. Now, has there been a lot of press covering your lawsuit?
Well, there has been quite a bit, and most of it has been very confused, I think. The media outlets that have picked up on it will try to reduce it down to a soundbite, and that's very difficult to do in this instance. My lawsuit essentially contends that I was fired from my job with the Department of Energy as a senior counterintelligence officer because the FBI issued a legal opinion that I was violating post-employment conflict of interest restrictions. And that certainly was not the case. In fact, prior to me taking a post-FBI job as a senior counterintelligence officer with DOE, for the last 15 years, retired FBI agents had taken employment in the exact same type of position. And in fact, when I took the position, there were 3 other retired FBI special agents in charge currently serving in the position of senior counterintelligence officers. So this legal opinion that the FBI issued stating that I was violating post-employment conflict of interest restrictions was really something new. That's an allegation and accusation that had never been made in the last 15 years, despite all of the FBI agents previously serving in those positions. And when I look at it, there really is only one reason for that, and that has to be the whistleblower complaint that I filed back in 2006. Which again, unfortunately, because of civil litigation back during the Anthrax investigation, CBS News was able to get its hands on some of the allegations in the whistleblower complaint, and they actually publicized some of that on an episode of 60 Minutes. And as you might imagine, that certainly did not go over well with the FBI.
Before we get to that, though, this post-employment conflict of interest. Now, these laws were passed for reasons of people lobbying the FBI for contracts and things like that, right?
Well, yeah, essentially what the law says is that if you retire from the FBI as a senior executive, you are prohibited for a 1-year period from having any contact with FBI employees, current on-board FBI employees, for the purpose of influencing them. And the statute is set up to prevent me, for example, from retiring from the FBI one day, going to work for IBM, and the next day picking up the phone and calling my colleagues back in the field office and saying, hey, you guys want to buy some IBM computers?
Right.
That's what it's set up to do. So there is a provision in the statute, an exception, that says that the statute does not apply if you are talking to the FBI employees on behalf of the United States. Now, I was hired by the Department of Energy to be a senior counterintelligence officer, and in my job description and in the job posting, it specifically enumerated one of my duties as conducting liaison and working with the FBI to protect the Oak Ridge National Laboratory from terrorist attack and the activities of foreign intelligence services. So the job that DOE hired me to do was specifically to liaison and to assist the FBI. And then after I took the job, the FBI legal office is issuing an opinion stating that that is a conflict of interest for me to do so.
So just imagine if terrorists are showing up at the door of this nuclear plant where you're employed to protect, you're not allowed to call the FBI and report that.
According to FBI headquarters legal staff, that is correct. And
Just
as you
think.
will recall, that's exactly what got us into trouble in 9/11 was the lack of information sharing and the lack of connecting the dots.
Now, has anybody else, now, because they actually tried to indict you with charges, correct? Your office was raided after you were fired.
Yeah, the day after I was fired, based on this legal opinion, armed agents showed up at my office. They searched the office and seized documents and carried those off with them. And for about a year, the Department of Justice, Office of the Inspector General, conducted an investigation, and that investigation was directed by the Public Integrity Section at the Department of Justice. So this was given a very thorough and comprehensive look.
Well, I guess during that period of time, there were no child pornographers or drug dealers or anybody on the loose that needed the FBI's attention during this period when they wanted to come after you for making phone calls to the FBI.
Well, yes. I mean, I believe that the investigation was politically motivated. Certainly, there was no evidence of any wrongdoing. It was uncovered. The Public Integrity Section issued an opinion that they weren't going to criminally prosecute anybody because they found no wrongdoing. So, I'm glad it's been put to rest, but the fact remains that everybody knows that I was investigated purportedly for violations of the federal criminal ethics statutes, and very few people know or understand what the result of that investigation was. And so as a result, there's a stigma associated with that, and it's made it very difficult for me to find employment. Nobody wants to hire somebody who's been accused of federal ethics violations, even though they've been cleared.
Well, let me ask you this. Now, when this happened, well, first let me ask you two questions. Are there any other cases of ex-FBI agents around this same period of time being treated the same way for the same type of technical violation?
No, over the last 15 years, it's been routine for FBI senior executives to retire and take these positions as DOE senior counterintelligence officers. And none recently or in the last 15 years have been subject to this type of allegation. In fact, currently right now, the former FBI assistant director of the Counterintelligence Division is serving as a senior counterintelligence officer at Los Alamos National Laboratory. And these types of allegations have never been leveled against him.
Right.
And his duties were exactly the same as mine, and that is to liaison and to assist the FBI in every way that he can.
So there can be no doubt in anybody's mind that you were targeted for retribution. And you believe it's because of the whistleblower memo that you sent to your superiors within the FBI. Not you didn't go public or anything. You did this within the FBI. You sent them a memo.
I did it within the FBI, but as I say, unfortunately, a good bit of it did become public because, as I say, through civil litigation that was filed, the 60 Minutes was able to get its hands on some of my reporting, and they did feature that in an article or an online magazine article. And specifically, it had to do with the FBI's director's edict that the AMERITHRAX case be compartmentalized. That means that essentially all of the investigators, the 35 or so agents and postal inspectors working on the case, could only know and be privy to that particular facet of the case that was assigned to them. And that edict came from the director in an attempt to stem the tide of leaks that were so prevalent in the case as it was ongoing.
How do you think that this memo got leaked to CBS?
Well, the Bureau, I believe, actually had to produce it pursuant to discovery demands in earlier civil litigation. So once it was produced to the plaintiff's lawyers, my speculation would be that the plaintiff's lawyers then turned it over to the media.
And in that memo, you had a lot of complaints about the way the investigation had been handled, and how this one of the main, I guess, persons of interest, this Ivins, Dr. Ivins, was treated in the investigation, and after his death, pretty much they closed the case. This is a closed case now, isn't it?
According to the FBI, yes, it is a closed case, and if Congress is satisfied with that, that is fine. It has been my contention all along that there is a wealth of exculpatory evidence regarding Bruce Ivins that would have precluded a conviction of him beyond a reasonable doubt, as is required in federal court to obtain a conviction. Now, I know that the FBI, after his death, laid out all of the evidence that they felt was indicative of his guilt. But I do not believe that all of the evidence probative of his innocence has been shared. And I don't know whether it's been shared with Congress. Perhaps it has, and perhaps they're very comfortable with what they see. I don't know. I'm not here to advocate one way or the other that the investigation should be reopened. All I'm saying is that the information that the American people have been treated to is a highly selective presentation of the facts that contains a lot of material omissions. They don't have the full story. Perhaps Congress does. And again, I think it's in Congress's lap as to what they want to do, if anything.
Well, how comfortable do you feel, though? Like right now, you were in charge of this investigation. How comfortable do you feel right now that we should feel safe? Let's put it that way. That what took place is resolved.
Well, I think that I don't have any concern about the safety of the American public. Certainly, we are much better prepared now as a nation to deal with a biological attack than we were in 2001. We were wholly and totally unprepared in 2001. I do have concerns, though, that we don't have the full story about what happened. And I'm not saying that Bruce Ivins was not the anthrax mailer. He may very well have been. But again, there is a wealth of exculpatory evidence, at this point, I would not consider the case to be closed. I think it's a cold case. I understand the FBI has closed it, but again, in my mind, it certainly is not solved. And I left the case in 2006 after 3 years, simply because the lack of urgency became exceptionally frustrating. And it was apparent to me that things were not going to move any more quickly than they had been. And at that point, I had invested basically 4 years of my life, 7 days a week, working the case. The director was immensely interested in it, the vice president immensely interested in it. But essentially, that is where the interest stopped. And,
which vice president, Cheney?
Cheney, yes.
Okay.
But it was very difficult to get resources for the case. The FBI at the time had 9 special agents who had a PhD in microbiology. I was unable to get those agents who were in other field offices assigned to Washington, D.C., even on a temporary basis, to assist with the investigation. And the FBI laboratory was moving very slowly with regard to forensic and scientific analyses, and those scientific analyses which had been done to date were not going to be admissible in federal court until significant validation testing had been done. And not to get too technical here, but Federal Rule of Evidence 702 provides that scientific evidence is not admissible in court unless it has the techniques have been shown to be reproducible and to produce reliable and consistent results. And so anytime you develop a new forensic technique, it's got to undergo a period of validation testing to show that the test does in fact produce reliable and consistent results time after time. And just because of the lack of engagement, it was apparent to me that it was going to be 2, if not 3 more years before we were able to advance the case any further.
Well, let me ask you this. In the beginning of this investigation, at least on the news, we were all hearing that there were connections to Al-Qaeda, because it happened right after September 11th, the World Trade Center bombing. There were connections to Al-Qaeda, there were connections to Saddam Hussein, because he had anthrax and barrels of it. Now, when you were seeing this on the news, what was your reaction being involved in the investigation?
Well, you're exactly right. And, I think that even today the public has a misperception that this investigation early on was focused or targeted on one particular individual or one particular group of individuals. And nothing could be further from the truth. I think the reason people have that perception is because of the leaks coming out of Washington about the case. Certainly indicated that or gave people that perception, because they didn't know about all of the other moving parts of the investigation that had not been leaked. But the investigation, when I took it over in 2002, it had been ongoing for 1 year, and what we wanted to do was make sure that we were considering every possibility. And of course we had to consider that this attack was perpetrated by international terrorists, by Al-Qaeda or another radical Islamic extremist group, because of the close proximity to the 9/11 attacks. We also had to consider the possibility that it was perhaps some sort of domestic terrorist group. We also had to think about whether it was a lone wolf attack by maybe perhaps some kind of disgruntled government scientist or a disgruntled commercial scientist, for that matter. And then we even had to look at whether this was some sort of test by a foreign adversary, maybe North Korea or Iran coming at us as a government entity, just sort of testing our defenses in the wake of 9/11 to see how vulnerable we were. So all of those possibilities were on the board and had to be investigated and had to be considered, and they were in fact considered and investigated.
Well, and it's my understanding that the letters were dated September 11th, 2001. Were they also mailed on that date?
No, the first letters were mailed, I believe, on September the 18th, which was 7 days after the attack. And then 21 days later, on October the 9th, we had a second set of mailings that went to Washington, D.C. So the letters that were in the envelopes that were laden with anthrax, they do make reference to the 9/11 date, indicating that there is a connection or a tie in there.
So the person or persons or group had to be kind of ready to get going. They only had a week from 9/11. They had to be planning this prior to September 11th in order to have the anthrax ready and these letters, right?
Well, that's exactly right. And, it has now been declassified and it's out there in the media. And what we know is that Al-Qaeda had a very robust bioweapons program that was getting very close to having an anthrax weapon developed. They were moving quickly in that direction. They had a microbiologist that they had hired. They had a laboratory set up outside of Kandahar in Afghanistan, and they were actively seeking pathogens. So, in my mind, I believe what happened is that the 9/11 attacks actually preempted an anthrax attack by Al-Qaeda, because clearly they were moving in that direction, and that was their design, and that was being directed by Khalid Sheikh Mohammed.
But the actual anthrax that was in these envelopes here in the United States, that anthrax came from military labs here in the United States, correct?
Well, we don't... What I can say is this: it was the Ames strain of anthrax. Ames is one of 211 different strains of anthrax that are out there. Ames was first discovered in 1980. It was isolated from a dead cow in Sarita, Texas, and it was sent by veterinarians at Texas A&M University to the U.S. Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases in Fort Detrick, Maryland, for them to look at and study. And one of the functions of USAMRIID in Fort Detrick, Maryland, it's an Army facility, And one of the purposes of that facility is to test the efficacy or the effectiveness of the anthrax vaccine that we give our troops. So when the scientists at USAMRIID received this isolate of anthrax from the vets at Texas A&M, and they tested it, they found it to be extremely virulent, meaning to be a very robust, a very strong strain of anthrax. And they decided that Ames would make a great vaccine challenge agent. So that basically, if our anthrax vaccine that we're giving our troops, if it works against the Ames strain, it will generally work against anything. And so that's how Ames began to be used within the government military facilities, is as a vaccine challenge agent. So we certainly know it was at USAMRIID, but there were also 16 other labs in the United States that had the Ames strain prior to the attacks. Now, ultimately, through some genetic anomalies that were discovered in the anthrax from the mailings, we were able to go to those 16 labs and see whether the Ames isolates that the 16 laboratories possessed contained any of those genetic abnormalities. And in fact, there were only a couple of labs where the same type of abnormality was discovered in the Ames strain in the laboratory's holdings as was in the mailings, and that was USAMRIID and also Battelle Memorial Institute. So those are the two laboratories that appear to have anthrax holdings that contain the same type of genetic markers that we saw in the anthrax used in the mailings themselves. And that's public information that's been released by the FBI.
But also, too, wasn't this weaponized grade anthrax in that it was so light and aromatic, I guess you might say, that it would immediately disperse into the air?
Well, weaponization, when we say weaponized, there are a set of characteristics that would indicate that something has been produced to be used as a weapon. And there are a lot of things that can be done to anthrax to make it more effective as a weapon. One would be the particle size. Anthrax spores are very, very small, and you want a particle size such that the particles remain aloft in the air so that they can be inhaled. Anthrax particles also have a natural electrostatic charge, meaning that they tend to stick to things, just like dust tends to stick to your television set. So if you can eliminate that electrostatic charge, it also allows them to remain airborne for a longer period of time. Also, the moisture content is another thing. So there are a number of things that can be done to anthrax to make it more effective as a weapon. I would be hesitant to characterize the anthrax in either one of the mailings as weaponized. The first anthrax that was sent to New York City was very different in character, and you can see that in pictures that the FBI has released. Is very different in character from the anthrax that was mailed to New York 21 days later. The anthrax that was mailed to New York in the first set of mailings, it really is brown and granular. It almost looks like it has the consistency of sand. And then 21 days later, the anthrax that was mailed to New York City, it has more of the character. It's of a more refined product. It almost looks like flour. So two very distinct and different batches. And again, photos of both batches have been released by the FBI.
Okay, that's fascinating because we know from the handwriting on the envelopes and stuff like that that seemed. I was looking at the videos today. That looks identical to me. But for whoever the source to mail these anthrax, to have access to two different grades of anthrax, that's a pretty serious situation, don't you think?
Well, it just simply means that two different production methodologies were used to produce it, and To make an anthrax powder like we see in the envelopes, you first have to take anthrax in its vegetative cell state, and then you have to force it to sporulate. And you basically force bacteria to sporulate either by depriving them of nutrients or you heat shock them at a certain temperature. And then once they've sporulated, you have to purify them, which means that you simply have to wash away the growth media and sort of exogenous trash that is surrounding them so that you're left with nothing but spores. And then once you do that, you have a slurry of spores, a wet slurry, and you need to dry that down in some way. And you could simply let the spores dry out with air. You could put them in an oven. You could use a food desiccator. Or you could use something as sophisticated as a lyophilizer, which is a freeze dryer that is used in laboratories to quickly freeze something with a very low moisture content.
Okay, we don't want to give too much of a recipe out. Okay, but it did seem to be, though, also, too, that so you would think that once they mailed out this first batch, that they would feel that the heat is on, and they'd be kind of keeping a more lower profile, and they wouldn't have access to this equipment to come up with a better grade. Wouldn't you think?
You know, I think that's a very good question, and there's a big question mark surrounding that as to why we have two batches that are so very different and very distinct.
And what do you think?
I honestly don't know.
Okay.
I don't know the reason for that.
Okay, honest. Okay, well, let's take a little break here, and we'll be right back with more of retired FBI agent Richard Lambert, who was the FBI agent in charge of the Anthrax investigation of 2001 and left the FBI and has kind of been targeted. You know, it seems obvious to me that he was targeted for his dissatisfaction with the course of the investigation, if that's fair to say, Richard.
I think that's fair to say.
Okay, great. We'll take these messages, and we'll be right back with more of a retired FBI agent, Richard Lambert. And now a word from our sponsors. We are listener-sponsored, and we appreciate your donations. If you like the show, please visit OppermanReport.com and click on the donate button, or you can donate directly through PayPal at OppermanReport@gmail.com. We have Mike Gray of InfinityHomePlans.com. He's the host of Parlay over at CJ Mars Radio, Thursday evenings, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you need custom home designs, stock plans, or 3D work, he's your one-stop shop for home design and drafting needs. Mike Gray at InfinityHomePlans.com. At InfinityHomePlans.com. If you're looking for essential oils, stop by and check out Essentially Tammy on Facebook. She is Young Living Essential Oils independent distributor. Now, these are 100% therapeutic grade oils. They help support the body's natural functions. You can visit her website posted on Essentially Tammy to see the current deals, or email at JockoTammy, JOCATAMI @yahoo.com, or call 352-239-8546. 352-239-8546. Hey, if you need a private investigator, go to my website, emailrevealer.com. We offer asset searches, locates, skip tracing, adoption investigations, online infidelity investigations. We can recover deleted text messages from a cell phone or trace an email to online dating websites to catch people cheating. That's emailrevealer.com, or you can call 800-572-9762. 800-572-9762 for emailrevealer.com, my PI website. Pacific West Bamboo. It's your premier source for construction and craft-grade bamboo poles. They're announcing their latest project with EcoHead Event Sanitation, making bamboo composting bathrooms and porta-potties. Their first display will be at the Lucidity Festival in Santa Ynez, California, April 11th to the 13th. Come by and say hi and see what you can build with bamboo. Contact them for any kind of event planning, display building. If you need construction grade or craft grade bamboo products, call Amanda at 503-839-8126, 503-839-8126, or visit PacificWestBamboo.com. That's their new website. We're also sponsored by the New World Mexican. This is a rural Mexican craft women's cooperative. They are traditional makers of fine handcrafted, authentic jewelry. They use beautiful stone mosaics and Pacific blue abalone inlay. They have a wonderful book of love letters written to their men in the United States, begging them to return to their families in Mexico. But they've written a new book, and it's it's about a young girl that falls in love with a rodeo bull rider and runs off with him without telling her family. It's a beautiful love story called Azucena Part 1, Azucena to the Rodeo. You can find their books and jewelry by clicking on their banner ad at OppermanReport.com or by Googling New World Mexican Women. You can also promote your business or website right here and have your ad played all over the world 7 days a week by emailing OppermanReport@gmail.com or calling 800-572-9762. Okay, we are back with the Opperman Report. I am your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman, and we are here with the retired FBI agent in charge of the Anthrax investigation, Mr. Richard Lambert. Rick, I have another question for you. You had mentioned before that Dick Cheney was on top of this. So now, yeah.
At the time, you may remember the just almost the public hysteria surrounding these attacks. I mean, people were putting their mail in ovens, baking their mail before they opened it. And so this was something that was on everybody's top priority list back in Washington. So I spent a lot of time briefing, cabinet level officials in the White House also about the developments in the investigation, because obviously there was intensive and extreme interest there. And I'm sorry, Ed, I do need to make just one departure here and state what I know is obvious, but I do want to make it plain that I am here today simply in my capacity as a private citizen, commenting on a matter of public concern. I don't work for the FBI anymore. I don't work for the United States government anymore. And the views that I'm expressing are purely my own, not those of the FBI or the U.S. government. But you are correct. The White House was very, very intensely concerned and interested about this, as was the director. But unfortunately, that sense of urgency sort of stopped there, and it was not prevalent in the lower levels of the FBI, which really hampered the investigation significantly.
Okay, and that was really the basis of my question. Now, couldn't you go to them and say, "Hey, guys, I need help over here in the FBI. Can you put the heat on these guys for me?"
I mean,
if you got Dick Cheney on the phone, say, "Dick, I need help over here." Put some heat on these guys.
Right. I had too much respect for the director to bring that sort of scrutiny and criticism to him at that point in time. I tried to deal with his subordinates as he instructed me to do. The director was very interested in the details of this investigation, its progression and its advancement, but in terms of resources that were needed to keep it going, expertise that was needed, getting people to conduct computer forensic analyses and those sorts of things. Those sorts of issues he delegated to his deputies and had me speak with them. And I did so repeatedly. But unfortunately, as I say, the same sense of urgency and concern and engagement that the director evidenced was not there with his subordinates.
Okay, and I've read your concerns both in the lawsuit and some different online articles. And just one point was that only 12 out of the 20 agents assigned to this case had any prior investigative experience. Which,
sadly, the investigation became sort of a political pawn in, I guess, in a larger struggle of egos back in Washington. The director, Robert Mueller, was very hands-on, supremely capable, exceptionally smart, probably the brightest man I have ever worked for before. But he had some ideas about management of the case that really violated about a 100-year-old paradigm in the FBI. And that paradigm was simply this. The FBI has 56 field offices across the country, and those field offices are headed by special agents in charge. And they generally view themselves as kings of their fiefdoms, and that they will run their investigations without hindrance or interference by FBI headquarters. Well, when this case came along, the Anthrax attacks, the director rightly viewed it as so significant from a national security perspective that he made an unusual decision and an unprecedented decision that he was going to run that investigation from FBI headquarters. And so he took it out of the hands of the Washington field office. He put me in charge of it. I was assigned to the FBI headquarters inspection division, and I was told to run it. And that's all well and good. I was very comfortable with that responsibility. Unfortunately, commensurate authority did not go with that charge of responsibility. So what happened is, in retaliation for the investigation being taken away from the Washington field office, they decided that they would only assign agents right out of the FBI Academy to the task force. And it seemed almost to me a deliberate attempt to obstruct or to make the investigation fail. I mean, the FBI has got some incredibly competent, seasoned investigators who have just done remarkable work over the years. But getting those agents assigned to the case was just an incredible struggle. And so for that reason, we had a lot of agents assigned to the case who had absolutely no investigative experience at all. It would be like if you took a first-year medical resident and told him, okay, tomorrow you're going to perform brain surgery.
Yeah, the biggest investigation in the country.
Yeah, I mean, he could probably do it, but not well. I had this very simple idea or notion in my mind that given the significance of this attack, 5 people died, 17 also got sick and ultimately recovered. The best and brightest that the FBI has among its 11,000 agents should have been assigned to this case. And that is one of the lessons learned for the next bioterrorism attack in this country is we need to, and the FBI's got a list of all the people who have this specialized expertise, and they need to be brought to bear immediately upon the problem and upon the investigation. And that simply did not happen. And I think we spent years catching up as a result of that. Okay,
but Mr. Lambert, you write this off as to political egos and infighting and politics and red tape kind of stuff, even after they've targeted you to the extreme that they have?
Well, I mean, it is what it is. Should the investigation have been handled differently? Yes, I think that now we have learned a lot of things about process for investigating these WMD attacks, and I think we're much better prepared today. The FBI is especially to deal with the next bioterrorism attack, but that preparation and being better prepared comes from hard lessons learned and failures and performance derelictions in the Anthrax investigation.
Well, you listed a whole bunch of concerns, both in your lawsuit. Can you give us a list of some of those concerns about the investigation that had you so upset?
Well, one of the things that had me particularly upset was this edict from the director to compartmentalize the investigation, right, so that the agents working on it only were aware of that facet that was specifically assigned to them. I mean, if 9/11 teaches us anything, it's that when you've got a major case like this, everybody really needs to know everything so that you can connect the dots and you can, make those associations and understand those relationships between things as they occur. And that edict was put in place, and I understand why it was, is to try to stem that tide of leaks in the investigation. And in fact, ultimately, those leaks resulted in Privacy Act litigation in which one litigant was successful, and the American taxpayers actually paid out, I think, about $5.6 million to one so-called person of interest because of leaks in the case that violated that individual's privacy rights. So I understand why the director did it. But it really had immense consequences. And when he brought this up about these leaks, and he brought it up repeatedly that I needed to make them stop, I repeatedly told him that I did not believe the leaks were coming from anybody on the task force, but they were coming from senior officials, either in the Department of Justice or in the FBI. And my offer to him was this. We were sitting around, I remember the director's conference table one day with all of his assistant directors, and I said, if we want these leaks to stop, what we need to do is afford everybody in this room a polygraph examination. And I'll take the first one. I'll go first. And he looked at me and said, we're not going to do that. And so as a result, the case was ordered to be compartmentalized. And again, that really hindered and impeded and slowed things down because now you've got people working in isolation on specific parts of the case and they can't share what they're learning with other individuals. And the result of that was that I ended up being the only individual who understood all of the pieces and parts of that investigation that were ongoing, which is not a healthy thing.
No. When you have the largest investigation agency in the world, on the planet,
exactly.
It's not
and
the
especially
way
when I'm not that smart. It would have helped to have had other brain power on this investigation, other people who also understood all of the different facets and aspects of it as the case was developing.
Well, one of the things that struck out at me was these two PhD microbiologists that were sent to take Arabic language classes for 18 months during the investigation. What justification could there be for that? What was more important for them to learn Arabic than to this investigation had nothing to do with Arabic, did it?
No, not at all. I believe that was just a politically motivated attempt to stymie the investigation, based upon the Washington field office's dissatisfaction with the fact that it was being run out of FBI headquarters. That was really unprecedented, and unless you're sort of steeped in and experienced with the FBI's culture, it's hard to understand how that could be perceived as such a slight or an offense to an agent in charge of the field office. But that is definitely how it was perceived.
Now, were you in touch with Dashiell's office and Leahy's office as well? Their staff calling you up and trying to coordinate and get information and stuff?
Oh, yes.
Okay,
yes.
Because it seems to me from the videos I watched today that they're dissatisfied with the investigation. They kind of felt like they were kept in the dark.
Well, again, they were, but that is because as we briefed them, some of the staffers turned around and leaked that information to the media about the investigation. So ultimately, it reached the point where we could not brief them anymore because what we told them immediately appeared in the newspapers the next day. And the individual out there who perpetrated the attacks, obviously, if he knows the course and the scope and the direction of the investigation, that provides him with an opportunity to conceal evidence, to develop alibis, tamper with witnesses, and do all sorts of things. So that had to be brought to an end.
Okay, we're getting down to like the last 12 minutes. What am I failing to ask you? What would you like to get out?
I don't know, Ed. Other than this is just all very unfortunate. Obviously, I did not expect, as a retired FBI agent, to have to be suing the FBI and the Department of Justice for them issuing a legal opinion that had no basis in law or fact as a result of this retaliation against me. It's a disappointment, but it is what it is, and we'll see how it comes out in court.
Yeah, I can see that, you're true a company man. You're an FBI man, 24 years. Now, and you're still protective of this agency that you love. But now don't you feel now that if this litigation were to continue, that more, what's the word, more dirty laundry about this investigation will come out in the litigation?
Well, I mean, it may or it may not. Actually, the whistleblower aspect of it is only a minor part of the litigation from a legal standpoint in terms of proving up a cause of action and prevailing in court. The fact is the FBI was negligent here in issuing a legal opinion, so this is very much a legal malpractice case.
Right.
As a result of that erroneous legal opinion, I was fired from my job and suffered damages. And so that's really what the case is about. It's a legal malpractice case. And what the FBI's motivation was for that negligence, for acting so grossly negligent in issuing that opinion, I don't really think that's going to be of much concern to the court. They aren't really going to care that much about why it happened. The reason, again, I have included that in the lawsuit is because it is such an anomaly, given that so many people who retired from the FBI preceding me went into the exact same job without these kinds of allegations ever having been leveled before. So that's the reason that it's in there. I hope no more dirty laundry comes out. As you say, the FBI is filled with lots of hardworking, very dedicated people. Unfortunately, we just had the perfect storm of clashing egos in this case that really set it back. And I think that we've all learned a lesson from that. And I don't think that it will happen again.
I have a couple of questions just out of my own curiosity that always just kind of said, hey, this is weird. One thing is this Robert Stevens, who worked for this National Enquirer office. Now, he was like one of the first victims, right?
He was the first victim, what they call the index case, yes. And he worked at the AMI building in Boca Raton. And AMI is the company that publishes the supermarket tabloids that you see,
right.
The Star, the Sun, the Enquirer, and those sorts of things. And Bob Stevens was a photographer for the AMI group. And unfortunately, despite extensive searches that were done at the AMI building, no anthrax-laden letter was ever recovered from that facility. Not sure exactly why that is. There was, and this is again all public information, but there was extensive anthrax contamination found within the AMI building, including within the mailroom. So it appears that certainly a letter did come into the facility. Whether it was disposed of, before it could be recovered from the building, is unknown. It may be that, as you know, anthrax has a latency period. It takes a little while to infect the body, and then
right.
Once it does infect you, particularly inhalational anthrax, it manifests the same symptoms as the flu. And so given that lapse of time between Stevens' exposure and the time he actually died, and it was determined to be an anthrax infection, I believe it's probable that letter was probably disposed of, just went out with the trash. He probably, when he opened it or got access to it, thought that perhaps it was a prank or a joke and just threw it away. That would be my speculation.
But my question is, why would that building be targeted? All the other targets were Congress and the New York CBS, Why that building in Florida?
I don't know, other than the fact that it was, again, the publisher of those supermarket tabloids.
Yeah.
And those tend to, as you know, publish stories that are somewhat sensational and fanciful anyway. So I don't know if the perpetrator was simply hedging his bets by sending it to the AMI building, as well as the editor of the New York Post, and then Tom Brokaw at NBC. You sort of got the full spectrum there of media outlets. I don't know. I don't know what the perpetrator's thought process was there.
Now, wasn't there something up in Reno, Nevada, as well, that involved Filipino porn, and I think it was a Google or IBM office or something? It was a computer office up there. With some anthrax was found up there as well, wasn't there?
Not that I can recall, but again, we're going back now 9 years.
Okay.
And it's certainly possible, but that particular set of facts is not ringing a bell with me.
Okay. All right. That's okay. Oh boy. Okay. Let's think. What else here? Well, anything else off the top of your head you'd like to share with us before we go?
Just that I think people should understand that that we are much better prepared now as a nation. Law enforcement is better prepared. The FBI is better prepared. The Postal Service is much better prepared to detect and prevent this sort of attack before it ever happens. I do believe that we'll see it again because of the success and the notoriety surrounding this. We know that anthrax and biological weapons continue to be high on the list of terrorist-intended operations. So we will see this again in the United States. And again, my concern is that those who are in senior leadership positions know and understand and learn from the history of this AMERITHRAX case so that we don't make the same sort of mistakes that we made in that investigation.
What do you think about people who say that the motive for this could have been to intimidate politicians that were not in favor of signing the Patriot Act?
Well, that was one of the things that we looked at. We had a number of criteria for so-called persons of interest, and motive is always something that you look at. And when you look at the spectrum of motive, it could have been an ideological motive, such as the one you're suggesting, those who were not behind the Patriot Act. It could have been a profit motive.
Okay.
Let's say, for example, somebody had invented some sort of device that would shut down a building HVAC system if anthrax were detected. An individual like that who had patented such a device would have stood a lot to gain from these anthrax attacks. And the motive also could have been victim-specific. Maybe Tom Brokaw or the editor at the New York Post was editorializing and said something that the perpetrator didn't like about a political issue. So we just don't know. But victimology and motive was something that we took a very hard look at.
Very interesting. So it would have to be someone who had access to anthrax, first of all, and a high grade of anthrax, and be able to process it like you described before.
Yeah, that was the first criteria, absolutely. Yeah. Whoever did this had to have access to the AIM strain of anthrax.
What do you think about the possibility that the person who would be behind this would also be able to stifle the investigation in the FBI?
I don't think that was a possibility. I think one of the things that made this case so very difficult is that the FBI at that point in time was lacking the expertise in microbiology and in anthrax, and so we were forced to draw upon a number of technical experts in the government and the commercial scientific community. And the reality is that any of those experts that you're drawing on for help and assistance could also be the perpetrator. Right. And that makes it very unusual. And it also makes it very incumbent upon the FBI to make sure they vet those individuals that they're asking assistance from, so that you're not actually sitting down with the perpetrator and asking him to help you aid the investigation.
And that's one of the things that happened with this gentleman, Ivins, who wound up committing suicide, is he was recruited by the FBI to help examine these envelopes, I believe, and then later on became a suspect.
Yes.
Oh, boy. Okay. I'd love to spend a couple more hours with you, okay, and really get into all these details. I got to tell you, but it is a tragic situation. I want to thank you for coming on. Now, you don't have a book or a website or anything.
I don't. Right now I'm contending with this litigation. I do have a book in draft that will have to undergo FBI pre-publication review, and so it may be years before that ever sees the light of day, if at all.
What if other people want to contact you for interviews?
Well, my email address is actually in the complaint that's been filed in federal court, and that is Lambert, Lambert, 0618 at gmail.com is how they can get a hold of me.
Yeah, it's on LinkedIn, too. That's how I found you, on LinkedIn. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. I really appreciate you coming on and giving us all this incredible insight. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. And God bless you, and I wish you well with this lawsuit. And it seems like it's open and shut to me. Really,
well, we'll see. We'll see. Ed, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. That is Richard Lambert, former FBI agent, retired now, and involved in litigation against the FBI over his whistleblower activities. And we'll be right back after these commercial messages. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
And now a word from our sponsors. We are listener sponsored, and we appreciate your donation. If you like the show, please visit OppermanReport.com and click on the donate button. Or you can donate directly through PayPal to OppermanReport@gmail.com. We have Mike Gray from Infinity Home Plans. He's the host of Parlay over at CJMR's Radio, Thursday evenings, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you need custom home designs, stock plans, or 3D work, he's your one-stop shop for home design and drafting needs. Mike Gray at InfinityHomePlans.com. At InfinityHomePlans.com. If you're looking for essential oils, stop by and check out Essentially Tanning on Facebook. She is Young Living Essential Oils Independent Distributor. These are 100% therapeutic grade oils. They help support the body's natural functions. Visit the website posted at Essentially Tanning to see the current deals, or email at Jocotami, JOCATAMI@yahoo.com, or call 352-239-8546. 352-239-8546. Hey, if you need a private investigator, go to my website, emailrevealer.com. We offer asset searches, locates, skip tracing, adoption investigations, online infidelity investigations. We can recover deleted text messages from a cell phone or trace an email to online dating websites to catch people cheating. That's emailrevealer.com, or you can call 800-572-9762. 800-572-9762, or email revealer.com, the website. Pacific West Bamboo. It's your premier source for construction and craft-grade bamboo poles. They're announcing their latest project with EcoHit and Vent Sanitation, making bamboo composting bathrooms and porta potties. Their first display will be at the Lucidity Festival in Santa Ynez, California, April 11th to the 13th. Come by and say hi and see what you're doing. Contact them for any kind of event planning, display building, construction grade or craft grade bamboo products. Call Amanda at 503-839-8126, 503-839-8126, or visit PacificWestBamboo.com, their brand new website. We're also sponsored by the New World Mexican Women. This is a rural Mexican craft women's cooperative. They are traditional makers of fine handcrafted, authentic jewelry, including stone mosaics, Pacific blue, abalone jewelry. They have a wonderful book, love letters meant to the United States, begging them to return to their families in Mexico. But they've written a new book, and it's called, it's about a young girl that falls in love with a rodeo bull rider and runs off with him without telling her family. It's a beautiful love story called Azucena Part 1, Azucena to the Rodeo. You can find their books and jewelry by clicking on their banner ad at OppermanReport.com or by Googling New World Mexican Women. You can also promote your business or website right here and have your ad played all over the world 7 days a week by emailing OppermanReport@gmail.com or calling 800-572-9762. Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I am your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. What the heck is that? Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I am your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. Let's see. That was our guest tonight, Rick Lambert. He was the retired FBI agent in charge of the Anthrax investigation. And there you got, man. There's a true believer, man. Still believes in the FBI and still carrying water for him, even after they raided his office and got him fired from his job and threw charges against him. But what are you going to do? So I got about 2 hours I got to kill tonight. Or else maybe I'll pass out. Who knows? So make a couple little announcements here, then take some calls. Maybe come up with another topic. If somebody wants to call in and discuss Anthrax with me, that'd be great. I got a bunch of notes on it. I'll probably give a little bit of information I have on that myself. As a matter of fact, why don't I get into that first? Funny story. Funny thing happened to me on the way to the radio show tonight. Okay, I was asking him about the Anthrax investigation that went on up in Reno. Okay, because I know a little bit about that. And what happened is during the Art Bell feud, back around 97, there was this big feud with the Art Bell and some of his former guests. In fact, one of his former guests was named Robert Stevens, coincidentally was the first victim in the Anthrax case as well. But Art had this big feud going on with David John Oates and Robert Stevens, who claimed he was a Navy SEAL, and all this nonsense was going back and forth. And we all got to know each other. Everybody's involved in this feud. I wound up giving an affidavit for Art and to help him to negotiate a settlement, this whole crazy business. But in this feud was this character that was from Reno. And so when this thing happened in 2001, because he worked up there in Reno, so I had some friends up in Reno, and I said, you know this guy? And he says, oh, yeah, we know who he is, yeah. So then later on in 2001, when this Anthrax investigation went on, it came out that this Filipino porn was in an envelopes with some suspected anthrax or with anthrax in it. And it passed through this Reno post office. So I talked to my friend up there about something else. And he goes, hey, Ed, remember you were asking me about that guy you knew? And I says, yeah, what about him? And did you hear from him? What's going on? He goes, the FBI was asking about him because of this anthrax investigation. So the FBI was actually investigating one of the people involved in the Art Bell feud, suspecting perhaps that they had passed along this anthrax up there in the Reno post office back in 2001. And that's kind of a little funny connection that I had to it. A couple other funny things. I guess you really can't call it funny, but because anthrax was a serious thing. Like 12 people died, like he said, a whole bunch got sick. But one of the things was that we didn't get a chance to talk about was that on September 11th, everyone in the White House and people in Congress and stuff like that were giving the medication Cipro, which is an antibiotic. And there was a theory at the time that Cipro could combat anthrax. So when you had the attack on September 11th, suddenly everybody in the White House and everybody in Congress, the Supreme Court, everybody, probably even people, big shots in the media and stuff like that, all the big powerful people in Washington, the elite in this country were all given this drug Cipro, right, that supposedly would combat anthrax. Even this is before they even started getting the anthrax in the mail. Somehow they knew they might need it, right? So when you look up the side effects for this drug, Cipro, and anybody could look it up, just Google common side effects of Cipro, include diarrhea. And I imagine you got 10%, let's say 10% of people get diarrhea that take this drug, 5%. You got 5% of the whole Congress is on the toilet, right? Okay. They're supposed to be investigating 9/11, doing all this stuff like that, but they're on the toilet because they got diarrhea. Dizziness, drowsiness, headache, stomach upset, abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting, blurred vision, nervousness, confusion. Okay. So you got the whole White House, a good percentage of them gets the side effect of confusion, hallucinations, depression, unusual thoughts or behavior, anxiety, agitation, sleep problems, insomnia or nightmares, and rash. So now just imagine, when you talk about, who has the motive and the opportunity to pull off this anthrax scam, the chemical came from somewhere on a military base. You had to have access to this, so the average person can't make this. That's one. And then somehow half the people in the government all have hallucinations, depression, and confusion. How do you pull that off? And then, like he says, from the top of the FBI, the investigation is hindered and monkey wrench thrown into the investigation. And I always thought that was a fascinating little side note there on the anthrax investigation, that they were all put on this drug that causes hallucinations and sleep problems, nightmares, unusual behavior. Another thing that always stuck out at me about this anthrax thing, especially, was that building that we discussed, the American Media Building in Boca Raton, Florida, where this guy Robert Stevens died. He worked for this National Enquirer type building. They run all of them. They was all owned by the same company, Globe, National Enquirer, all of them. When this building was infected with anthrax, a real estate investor bought this building for $40,000. Okay? And you can look up this building. Look up the American Media Building in Boca Raton, Florida. And put in anthrax, too. You can see the size of this building. It's like one of those big Hampton suites, one of those big little hotels, a little motel. Huge building in Boca Raton, Florida, sold for $40,000. And then the investor that bought it made a plan to lease it to a company called Bio One. Okay, now the financial terms of this agreement have not been disclosed, blah, blah, blah. But Bio One was this company that we just started up, that they could clean out anthrax. They got the expertise and the know-how to take care of anthrax. Don't worry about it. It's going to clean this out there for you. And then we're going to rent this building from you. Bio One is owned by Rudy Giuliani, former mayor of New York City. Happens to own the company that went in and had this deal to buy up this building and then lease it back after cleaning it up. They buy it for $40,000 and they clean it up. Now get this. I found something else here. To clean up the Brentwood Post Office in Washington cost $130 million. Okay? Now, so if you're looking for suspects, who could have been behind this anthrax deal and started companies to clean it up for $130 million, I would take a look at those people as well, to see who own these companies. It's sort of these cleaning companies for anthrax cleanup jobs. He was discussing this character, Ivins, Dr. Ivins, who was driven to suicide by this investigation, by the way. And then after his death, the FBI pretty much announced that the case was closed. And it had to be this guy, Ivins. He had to have done it. Because he was an alcoholic and, he was depressed. And bizarre connections. One connection that they claimed it had to be him was because he had an obsession with a college sorority near Princeton University. And that his obsession was that he edited some comments on Wikipedia about this sorority. And that the post office where he mailed the anthrax letter was next to a storage locker that's a sorority used for their ceremonial gowns and pledges and stuff like that, where they kept an office for some equipment. Not where the sorority house was, but where they had some office to take care of some storage. And because it was 300 feet from there, that it had to be connected to him because he had a connection to the sorority, because of Wikipedia, and the sorority just happened to have an office by this mailbox. Just outrageous connection. But this guy, Ivins, that was one of the accusations against him. And also, too, that he spent a lot of time late in his office there with his... but he never had the type of anthrax. He had liquid anthrax. He never had the type of anthrax that was... the type that was placed in these envelopes. But after word came back that he was going to be arrested, fatal overdose of Tylenol. But there was no autopsy. They did a blood, what's that called? Tox level, to find out what was in his blood there, and they came up with it was Tylenol. Either it was Tylenol codeine, which was in the autopsy, the medical examiner's report, or it was in the police report, was that he had purchased 2 bottles of Tylenol PM. So the name Tylenol is in there. We don't know if it's Tylenol PM or Tylenol with codeine. But that was in 2008. The government declared that he was responsible for the Anthrax letter attacks. They're also accusing this guy Hatfield for a while. And I know there's other people. I know A.J. Weberman has his target on Hatfield because he did it. So if you want to call in and talk about Anthrax, you can be call 702-605-4894. 702-605-4894, or you can Skype me at ed.opperman. This guy Irvin, too, for a while there, he was involuntarily committed to a psychiatric hospital, okay? And the FBI had either an agent, or wiretaps, who knows, or an agent or an informant in one of his therapy sessions. And he made some very bizarre statements. We're forward to believe the FBI report. And one thing he says is, I can tell you I don't have it in my heart to kill anybody. I don't have any recollection of ever doing anything like that. As a matter of fact, I have no clue how to. How to make a bioweapon, I don't even want to. Another statement he says is, I can tell you I'm not a killer at heart. Then he says, if I found out I was involved in some way, and then another quote is, I don't think of myself as a vicious, nasty, evil person. Then he says, I don't like to hurt people, accidentally, in any way. And several wouldn't do that. He mentioned the scientists at this USA wouldn't do it. And in my right mind, wouldn't do it. Then he laughs. But it's still, I feel, responsibility because the Anthrax wasn't locked up at the time. So some very bizarre statements. We had a call coming in from 646. Hey, 646.
Hello?
Hey, how are you?
Hi.
Hi.
I just wanted to talk about the interview.
Okay, what do you got?
I just found it fascinating because it was just like this. It was like I read his lawsuit.
Yeah.
So he's talking about it's like this incredibly sophisticated anthrax that's so light, and that was like not what was reported at all. In the paper that it was like this. It was obviously this terrorist anthrax that was like really simple. That was made by Al Qaeda and all this stuff, and it's like he wasn't putting any of the pieces together. Does he really think it was just like some rogue government political fallout? I mean, who does he think sent it?
Well, you got to understand. First of all, the guy's he's in the middle of a lawsuit.
Right, I got that.
Yeah. Secondly, Hatfield, won a lawsuit against the FBI, because they were accusing him of this, so legally he's been cleared. No one can point the finger at him. Ivan,
right? I wasn't insinuating it was him or anything like that.
Yeah, but I'm saying that's why the guest couldn't really point the finger at anybody. He's in the middle of a lawsuit, and but that's a good question. I don't know. I guess he seems to think that it's still some foreign threat, or no. I think he thinks it has to be a local threat. But we really couldn't get that out of him. It's the kind of guest I need a couple hours with, to tell you the truth, to really.
It was just it was fascinating because it wasn't like the usual, conspiracy crew guest. It was like, kind of like you said, like a company guy. Right. So I was pretty fascinated by it.
Yeah, it takes a little more work, It takes a little more time, a little more work, But we'll get to it. I'm hoping I can get him for a membership section show and really sit a couple hours with him off the air and get him to relax a bit. I think especially, too, after this litigation, I think we can get more out of this guest. But this won't be the last Anthrax show we do by any means.
Yeah, because that's always the question. I mean, I know 9/11 people always say, like, Building 7, but, like, really the anthrax, like, that's kind of a key, you know, it just, like, came out really, it had really good timing. You have to believe that, I guess, someone was inspired by 9/11.
And just happened to have this weapons-grade anthrax sitting in their drawer, you know?
Yeah, really great anthrax, and then got really lucky that the government was doing all this infighting. And
right.
My favorite part of what he said was that no one was allowed to talk to each other. And so, you know, we're sitting here and I was like saying, you know, well, can you imagine an investigation like in a police department where nobody's allowed to talk to anybody else in the police department if they're investigating a murder? Like how well that investigation would go. They're not allowed, you know, it's like everybody's segregated from one another, how well that would go if they were working together as a team. It's nuts.
Well, worse than that, I can tell you right now, because if 12 agents out of 20 agents had just come out of the academy, these were kids. So you got 20.
Right.
You got 20 guys working for you. There's only 8 you can even talk to, you know, without smacking them in the head. You got 12 guys, you know, stumbling over each other, you know, trying to find out where the water cooler is, literally, you know. You know, get these guys out.
This isn't an important public safety issue, so let's put, you know, our greenest guys on this, and they're not allowed to talk to each other. But that'll make it go really well, you know.
And then have Dick Cheney on the phone every day complaining, you know. What's going on?
I know.
I can imagine.
And then my other favorite thing was that it was from a cow in Texas. That I didn't get from reading the lawsuit.
No.
I didn't pull that fact out.
That's where they get the strain.
Cow.
Yeah, that's where they get the strains, and then they have to, you know, they you know, develop it, you know, and it gets you know, it has to have that source, you know, originally.
Oh.
It's a biological source. But I forgot what I was going to say too. But something about the 20 agents. There's only 8 guys you can really. Oh no, you're right. But even with this, get this, man, this guy did some really good work because they were able to. They were able to locate the actual mailboxes that these envelopes were placed in. You know. So that's so they went to every single mailbox and tested every mailbox for traces of anthrax and found it. That's a ton of legwork. That's really serious work, man. So, and he only had 20 guys, it sounds like, you know, and 8 of them were just, you know, sitting around 12 of them doing nothing, picking their noses. You know? Yeah.
It's the two go-getters
that
got down to the bottom of it. That was just it was fascinating interview. You know, they're all so different, but this one was, you know, you kind of felt like, I don't know, I guess as a listener, I felt like I was like yelling at the radio. Like, you don't get it. Like, maybe you could put those things, and I know maybe he does get it, but, you know, you get kind of frustrated and fascinated, you know, as a listener, put it together.
Yeah.
You know, all the little things.
Trust me, I know what you're saying, man. It's very frustrating. And especially, too, we've been under such attack lately, too, that even, you know, like, we didn't get the equipment fixed and up and running and working until like a half an hour before the show.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. 2 weeks ago when we did that show with about the Al-Qaeda visas and about how Obama's CIA, 5 minutes before that show, one of the guests sent me over a PDF with his bio on it. And it said, as soon as when I tried to open it up, it said, hey, there's malicious malware on here. You know, but I says, you know, let's open it up anyway. And it shut down SAM, the broadcasting software, and Call Notes, the recording software. Everything else is fine, but it shut down those 2 softwares. And I've been trying to fix it for 2 weeks, and we had it fixed this morning. And then when I went to open it up again, it was broken again. So it wasn't until a half hour before the show that we finally got it fixed. So that's the kind of stuff we're dealing with over here, guys. If you have any idea.
You're just like flying by the seat of your pants, you know?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you do a great job. So, I mean, I hate to say my social life has really suffered because, you know, I got to be in on Friday nights.
Yeah, well, me too. You know, these guys can catch the repeats, you know, but I got to sit here no matter what. But I got no social life anyway. I'm done. Forget me.
Such a geek.
Yeah.
Such a geek. Great. I'm such a geek. Not you. I'm such a geek. You're at least producing them, you know? So, what's coming up?
Coming up next week, we have John Potash coming back to talk about his new book about how the government has been using drug addiction against us and against activists, and we're going to be talking about all of that.
Oh, that's fascinating stuff.
Got another Paul is Dead show coming up.
What? Oh, yeah. I don't know about that one. I can't go there, but I'm fascinated by those too. But that's a lot of work, to replace an entire human being.
I agree with you. Yeah,
you would think that like a nurse would, like those National Enquirer stories. It's always like the nurse that like gives it up, to the National Enquirer for it. It feels like someone would give it up,
Well, a nurse assuming that the first McCartney's dead, but it could be they were just swapped out and they're both alive, because there was a guy living in McCartney's house that looked just like him, and he was living in his childhood home. Listen, who knows? There's so many factors in all that, but there's so much weird stuff with Lennon and hypnotism and Mark David Chapman and Yoko. Who the hell knows?
Yoko Ono is just, she's, we both went to the same college. She's insane. Just what a weirdo,
Yeah, well, Yoko Ono's an escaped mental patient.
I know, and just like left her kid.
Yeah.
No maternal instinct at all.
Yeah,
and the fact, didn't she have her son on the same birthday as John?
Oh no, I didn't know that. I didn't hear that part. No.
Yeah, like Sean, I think, is born on the same day, and I know she was older when she had him, and I was wondered if, like, she was just so weirdy and occult if she had, planned that out, for the astrological.
Yeah, she definitely is weirdy and occult.
Benefits.
Yeah, and supposedly there's a lot of stuff that came out in her album Shattered Glass. There's like a lot of occult references in there too about her regrets, actually, about being involved in the occult. But that song "Walking on Thin Ice,"
Yes. Oh, and there's a big show in New York coming up with all her her music, her fantastic music, because at the I don't know if it's at the maybe the Met. It's one of those big museums, maybe the Whitney or the Met or whatever. There's a big Yoko Ono show coming up, and I just can't believe that people still give her any credit at all for being an artist or a musician or anything, besides being married to someone very talented.
Yeah, I hear you. Also, last week we did that show on Marilyn Monroe.
That was interesting.
That was the highest rated show we've ever done. And we got
more.
Oh yeah, but by far. And we got more response to the blog and to the Amazon, .com. When you go to my blog and you click on the book, I can see the Amazon hits. Like 300 times. Our second most popular show. That was our most popular show by far in a long, long time.
Wow.
Yeah, and by coincidence, Buddy Greco, who was up there at the Cal Neva Lodge that was owned by Frank Sinatra, that weekend when Marilyn was raped, like our guest was talking about, has the last photographs of Marilyn Monroe when she was alive. He took the pictures, and he's putting them up for sale right now. I don't know if you heard about the show or what. I don't know. But it
wasn't Bert Stern who did that book, The Last Sitting? He always said those were the last photographs. But, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, Buddy Greco, he's saying it's the last photographs of Marilyn Monroe before she died. The other ones might be professional photos. These are like, candid photos.
Oh, these are just like, okay.
Yeah, and he just decided to put them up for sale, so I contacted him about coming on the show and talking about it and promoting the sale of those books, because I'd love to hear what happened that last weekend, because he knows he knows all these guys. He knows Sinatra. He knew
it. Show.
I know.
Though, as a listener, I could listen to maybe, I don't know what this says about me, but like 10,000, if you just did nothing but West Memphis 3 shows from now on.
Yeah.
With the call-in part, because I live for just, you can present people who think that they're innocent with 100 tons of evidence, and they will still call in and tell you that it was hops. Like, just whatever you say, whatever you throw at them.
Yeah.
they'll just come right back up and be like, he had an hour to kill 3 kids with no motive in the middle of like while he's looking for his dead stepson. Like, you know.
Yeah, I know.
And tie shoelaces 3 different ways or whatever. I could listen to like 100 of those episodes.
Yeah, and meanwhile,
I can't ever get enough of them.
Yeah, the killers that confessed were seen walking down that road covered in mud. You know? Like, you know, it's insane. But see, one of the things with this, though, is with this blood sacrifice, with these ritual murders, is I believe that the people that do them can lie and get people to believe their lies, and they can also get people to lie for them convincingly.
Yeah.
I've seen that in other situations with this blood sacrifice and stuff. And this guy Eccles, man, he's supposed to be a big shot with the OTO.
Creepy dude. I mean, really. And those documentaries are so amazing because, you know, I first saw them, I'm like, oh, this is such a miscarriage of justice. Oh, my Lord, you know. And then you see an interview with him and you're like, oh, gosh, he's really creepy. And then you look into it further and you're like, whoa. And you should have known, like, or I should have known when I watched the documentary when he says, he turns to his lawyer at one point and he says, I think we've got the case beat.
Oh, really?
And I think nobody who's, you know, innocent is going to say, we beat the, you know, you're not going to beat a case if you're innocent, you know. You only beat a case if you're, I mean, that's just how I see language, but I should have known then, but it's just really creepy being in the same city as this guy. And I think and the more time he's out, the more, you know, he comes out with all this stuff. I mean, he did that great show with William Ramsey about, you know, his membership in the, I want to call it the ITO, but what is it?
OTO.
The Crowley
OTO.
organization.
OTO.
What is that? OTO. Thank you. The OTO. But, you know, the longer it gets, the more, like, he just can't have enough creepy occult tattoos. He can't do enough really scary, creepy artwork and creepy tweets. And it's just, you know, I guess the yoga woman maybe woke up to some kind of realization that, I don't know. That
no, I think there's been.
No,
I think they canceled that appearance, but they've been photographed together since then. And
oh, really?
Oh, yeah. See, I predict, man.
I guess I'm naive. That I guess or maybe she's into that. Maybe she's a culty and witchy and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, the people around him, they all are. There's a theory.
I know, like half of them are. I think half of them really think he's innocent, and I think the other half are just like witchy and occulty. And
I can tell you that all the top people from the beginning all know that he's guilty. And I also think that he's gonna come out and admit it in a couple of years. That he did this, you know, for you know, occult practices, you know, and start advocating that. They can't convict him again. And I
do you think that's what happened with his wife? Do you think he can't? I mean, she hasn't been seen in a year, right?
No, they've recently been photographed together again too. They did an appearance together, just recently too. Yeah,
so that's still. I know there was a while she was missing.
You know,
of course, I had the fantasy that like he had some like late night confession or something, but obviously that didn't. Or maybe that did happen, and you know, or maybe she knows. I would think that he would. He seems so into his identity as a victim and a wrongly accused guy. I can imagine him like admitting it to like, you know, a few witchy people, but I can't imagine him like publicly coming out and saying he did it. But who knows?
I see it coming. See, the thing is, and I would like to do more shows about it too, but the thing is, they're such, the fans are such stalkers and just the most rudest, and you deal with just more crap and BS dealing with that. We are doing a couple more shows coming up on that. I have one of the witnesses who testified at the trial is going to come on the show, who's never done a show before. And I got his attention.
Which one?
I can't.
Or can you not say? I don't want you to say probably because you'll get harassed. Right?
Yeah, because
or he'll get harassed.
Yeah, we had Pam Hicks, Terry Hobbs' wife, was supposed to come on, and they threatened her and then harassed her and then scared her not to come on. I'm still working on that though, and it's 10 times more trouble than any show. You have no idea because you can't even post the. You can't announce it, you know, and just people.
I know, and young girls too. I notice on Twitter that a lot of young girls will say supportive things about him or be doing book reports or, saying he's dreamy, and it's really, really creepy. Oh, boy.
And people still saying, oh, I wear black, or I listen to metal. They totally missed the whole thing. They totally missed it.
I know, and even though the prosecutor's like, it's not about the metal. Yeah. My kids wore black and listened to heavy metal. I like heavy metal myself. Whatever you say, it doesn't penetrate. Nothing penetrates.
Well, Jesse Miskelly's father said, he says, what are you talking about? All those kids dress like that. They all look like that. They all were wearing the heavy metal and listening to the metal music. They're all lone kid. It was at the 90s. This wasn't Mayberry RFD, in the 50s. Right. This was, the 90s, Walmart. And trailer park kids. But the difference is that Eccles was walking around telling people he was going to sacrifice his baby when the baby was born if it was a boy. All kinds of putting in mental institutions.
Killing dogs. You made the best point.
Yeah.
There's so many dog animal lovers, including myself. You would think just the dog killing, forget the child killing, would be enough to turn people off.
Right.
But that doesn't...
The guys who saw him kill the dogs, too, the guys who saw him kill the German Shepherd took a polygraph and passed. By the way, every polygraph would have to be 100% wrong. Everyone who said he's guilty and incriminating,
right.
And everybody who said, they would all have to be 100%. Polygraphs aren't admissible. They're not 100%. But these are 100% because if you believe you didn't do it, they're all 100% wrong.
Right. And just mixed with his interviews where he lies about everything. Yeah. That's the person you're going to trust? The guy who lies about everything? About having to watch his back when he's in, like, a solitary cell 24 hours a day because he's afraid of getting shanked when there's nobody else there? Like, he lies about everything.
Well, you know what? He and the guy in the cell next to him, they removed a brick between their cells. Did you know this story?
Yes, I do.
So then he could crawl.
I do know the story.
So he could crawl into the other cell and have sex with this guy, and then crawl back, put the brick back, and then sue the jail for saying they weren't protecting him. The other guy was twice his size; he couldn't fit through that hole. The whole thing's crazy.
I think there are some members of the public that aren't witchy, that are just convinced of the DNA evidence with the hair, because they say it's an exact match to Terry Hobbs when it's, not an exact match. Right. It's 5% of the population, and the kid lived with him, But I think that is somehow persuasive in some ways with these incredibly, biased and ridiculous documentaries, but once they make up their mind, they're really rigid too. Though it's really hard to. I don't get it. It's just that's what's so fascinating. They all have no problem about calling up and just sticking to their opinion, no matter what what evidence is presented. It's really fascinating.
Oh yeah, like the comments on YouTube, you can tell that they didn't even listen to especially the show where we pretty much lay it out a really good case that he's a member of the OTO. They named a library after him. He signed up to the OTO ministry group while he was in prison, while he was claiming he was a Buddhist. The OTO has talking about the best type of child sacrifice to do. All this stuff is there, but they don't even listen to the interview. Oh, this case had nothing to do with the occult. Wow. Anybody who thinks it didn't follow the case. And it's funny, too. That's one of the reasons why I brought on Sean Wheeler. But he's coming back, too, by the way, Sean Wheeler. He's going to do a whole...
Oh, yeah. He really knows the case.
Oh, are you kidding me? He's the guy that started all this. He was the only guy arguing the guilt. And he knew the case so well that it became a badge of honor. It became a mark of expertise in the case to memorize the case because he had the case memorized. So now all these they got to memorize this case. They got to know every little freaking detail. How many every little who was the cousin or an uncle. They got to know everything. Yeah. And then they think just because they have it memorized better that they have to be right about it. But because they're basing that on Sean Wheeler's encyclopedic knowledge of this case way back in '97 and '98 when he knew this thing backward and forward. He's the one who got all those documents.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's up on Callahan. 5K or whatever. 6K.
Yeah, I'd say about half of the docs on Callahan, Wheeler got first, easily. Back
wow.
10 years, 15 years ago. You know?
Wow. That's a lot of work.
I know, and then these kids will come along and say, well, I never heard of Sean Wheeler. Who's that? I said, well, you don't know anything about this thing, you know?
What did you say his handle was? Like, Public Enemy?
Public Enemy. One of them was Public Enemy Numero Uno. So he called himself Penu, P-E-N-U. And then another one later on was Necromancer. You know, he was a nut, you know? And he had a whole bunch of blinds. Yeah.
But don't you also notice just with a general, like, that young kids aren't being taught to critically think? So, like, when the Bill Cosby accusations came out, you know, I just caught, like, a little clip of, like, The Talk or one of those woman-y talk shows. And I think something like, maybe it was like 13 or 14 women had all come out with the same exact story about Bill Cosby. And the woman who, you know, is giving talking points and notes, and her comment was something like, well, you know, there's a lot of stuff on the internet, and, you know, Bill Cosby, I don't even know if I could be as inarticulate as she was. Bill Cosby, you know, we don't know, we weren't there, so it's not a court of, I don't even think she said a court of law, but what she meant was, you know, he hasn't been tried or convicted in a court of law, so we can't say he's guilty, and I wasn't there, so I don't know. But can't you think after 13 women all have the same story, you know, tell exactly the same story, that the likelihood of it being true with no financial incentive, that the likelihood that it may be true is greater than not?
Yeah, you would think so. And the same people that say, well, oh no, the Illuminati's coming after him because he talks about blacks taking responsibility for themselves. And the Illuminati went after Michael Jackson because he was exposing them, you know, and they set him up and they you know, they did all this. You know, my God, you know, you got to be so. There's no critical thinking anymore.
His son's killing was weird. That was always strange to me. To kill the guy was on his way to kill somebody or do a drug deal or something, and just like saw him on the side of the road,
right?
And didn't take anything and just shot him, and then like didn't go to trial. He didn't want to go to trial and just wanted to close the case and take his lump.
And then, like,
that's a very odd thing. I mean, that I think is more. I don't even like the word Illuminati, but you want to talk about some kind of conspiracy. The son's killing is so odd.
And then, less than a week later, he has his daughter arrested for claiming that she was extorting him. This love child that he had, you know, for claiming she was extorting him. He has his daughter arrested, you know, and now she's back out. She's back out now, you know, making saying the same thing, that she's his daughter. So she's still saying it.
Yeah. And I think he paid money for years to support.
He supported her for years, yeah.
I mean, do you think, could it be possible that one of these women that he drugged or something, that could have been a revenge killing his son?
I don't know about that.
Could it have something to do with the daughter
I don't know, but the killing was weird. It was funny, too, because if you listen to the first interview I did with Mark Ebner, he brought up Bill Cosby, assuming that I would know what he was talking about the rapes, you know, about the drugging and the rapes. Because he's been talking about this for years and years.
Mark Ebner.
Yeah.
Mark Ebner, yeah.
So, and he says, well, what about Bill Cosby? And I says, yeah, what about that? When his son got shot and then he gets his daughter arrested. And he wanted to talk about the rapes, though, but I totally missed it. I should go back and listen to that myself and see what was going on with that, because he had some stuff he wanted to say that I wasn't letting him in the first interview.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You mess up
sometimes.
I
read his book. It was interesting.
Oh, really? Which one?
Hollywood Interrupted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always wonder about, I don't know, I didn't think to at the time, but now with Johnny Depp supporting Damien Eccles, it's awfully strange on Halloween that River Phoenix dies right in front of his club.
Yeah, when River Phoenix was dating his ex-girlfriend.
Yeah, with him being so jealous and all that. Yeah, I thought it was Sometimes I wonder about that. But
yeah, and someone else said that River Phoenix took a drink, and he says
that's what was in that book. Yeah, the book, and I was like, I've never heard of a speedball being put in a drink, so I thought that was. But I don't know. But then GBH was going around then too. Did they test for GBH then? Would that have come up?
I have no idea.
His autopsy?
I have no idea.
Because you remember Billy Idol collapsed, like, right around that same time of a GBH overdose? I mean, there's a ton of stuff. And the other weird thing is that is in his autopsy is, like, they said, he took a cold pill. And I was like, well, maybe it was, like, crystal meth back then, and they didn't make the connection. I don't know if it was even made from cocktails back then, or if it could have even been confused in the same way.
Well, if you could die if you take like NyQuil, and then you take some Tylenol PM at the same time. That's lethal. That could kill you easily. Oh yeah, that's what this guy Ivan died from. Tylenol PM. Tylenol PM is a dangerous freaking drug, man. And they sell it in those big giant bottles. For what reason do they sell in those big giant bottles for? And a friend of mine that worked for 911 dispatch told me, she says, you know what, man? Get that stuff out of your house. Because all of them, all of the overdoses are the Tylenol PM.
Well, my doctor told me that just Tylenol, all those, just aspirin, ibuprofen are the second most toxic drug, second only to chemotherapy drugs.
Oh, really?
That's what my doctor told me. That, I'm not saying don't ever take them if you have a headache, but he's just said to be, really, there's a point when I was on a lot of pain, I was taking a lot of aspirin, and he gave me a huge lecture about it because they're so toxic to your liver.
Really? I take a lot of ibuprofen. I know Tylenol's bad for your liver, but I take a lot of ibuprofen.
That's in there.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Ah, great.
All the same. Cut back on the. Anyway, and I heard that. I don't know if I'm just really sad that about Dave McGowan being so sick, and Nick Bryan I heard too. It's just terrible.
Well, the Nick Bryan thing I haven't confirmed yet, but Dave McGowan. For people that don't know, we found out that Dave McGowan is in the hospital with stage 4 cancer. And it was a very sudden kind of thing, and he was saying, we saw pictures of him where he said he was sick, and he thought he had the cold or something. His face was all swollen. He looked horrible. Mm-hmm. And but his brother tells us now that he wasn't even sleeping at night, and couldn't sleep through the night, and would have that sleep apnea kind of thing where, he couldn't breathe. So he would go to bed at night and wasn't even sure if he was going to wake up the next day. It was so bad. So Dave, he went to the hospital. They got him. He just started him on chemo, and we're all praying for him. We'll know if this first stage of chemo helps. If not, there's a second stage they can do. And but the diagnosis is really bad. They're saying that the best case scenario would be like 5 years. It's like a 2% chance. But other people are coming forward saying, hey, we had the same thing, and they lived 7, 10, 15 years. So you don't know what these doctors tell you.
He's such a special guy, and I guess listeners can donate through his Dave's web page to his PayPal.
Yeah, there's a PayPal donate
button. He can get
button.
the extra support that he needs.
Yeah, because you got to remember, now a lot of people making these comments to me. I got a couple emails this week saying, oh, what does Dave need money for? If he's on his bed, he's not going to be thinking about money. But he can't work, And his website is davesweb.cnhost.com, and right at the top there's a donate button. I forgot to put the link on the blog last week, and my most biggest show too. I should get it on there fast. But
right,
yeah. But there's a donate button on there, and you got to understand he can't work now while he's sick like this. Okay, and he's just like all of us, living paycheck to paycheck. His brother, while he's sitting by his bedside, can't work and support his family. So they need our support, and people got to start taking this serious. I know there's a lot of bull crap out there, but when you look at people, if Nick Bryan, if it's true about him, I know Vinny Eastwood, man, he has no money to pay his rent this week and live. Dave is on his quote unquote deathbed, and people are putting their necks out for you, and a lot of other people on the other end are kind of treating it like a game, like it's a joke. or it's a hobby or something fun, entertainment. Look at Reverend Pinckney. Reverend Pinckney is in jail 7 years. The guy's 67 years old. He's in jail for 7 years. He's facing serving already in there.
Yeah.
So and I have no doubts in my mind. Yeah.
I think if you've been through something horrible, it doesn't just affect you. It affects your whole family, and even right down to your dog.
Right.
And, dog food, rent, family, everything. It's not just you.
Right, because Dave's brother can't be working
either.
either.
And for those people who are suggesting something like that's available in California, some kinds of like alternative treatment, or even just for nausea control, with marijuana. Not that I'm suggesting it, but if he chooses to go with, that's not free. That's not covered under your health plan. Those kind of things. This is a really aggressive chemo he's going through. So.
Yeah,
those are all personal health decisions he's going to, have to make, but at least he should have the, option, right?
Yeah, he doesn't have good health insurance. I can tell you that right now, and neither does the brother, and this is going to bankrupt the family, So the point is, though, okay, if we're serious about what we come on here talking about, we got to stick together, and we got to help each other out. And I know, like, even with the members section, I set up the new members section to help support me and support our situation here. And we got a lot of people complaining, that we don't have new content up. We got our own problems over here, too, as well. I haven't heard from Christoph in about 2 weeks. He's not a well guy either. The webmaster who volunteers to do this stuff for us. This is all volunteer, man. This is no one's getting rich here. We're taking money out of our pockets to do this for you. Even right before this show tonight, thank God that Tracy from Awake Radio, Tracy Kennedy from Turtle Island News, found a copy of the software for me and sent it over to me. She sent me over like 10 of them. None of them were working because obviously I got some crap going on my computer here. So, but otherwise, I would have had to buy another program or rent, do $15 a month for another expense for all this. And all this money's not growing on trees. This is work, guys. This is a lot of work. Even doing my research today on this Anthrax thing was hours and hours and hours. And that's with, guys, by the way, too, we're just settling my custody thing with my daughter this weekend, okay? We're going to be signing this paperwork that's going to end all this stuff. My daughter's going to be with me 5 days a week.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, which is all we wanted from the beginning. So we had to go a whole 2 years in litigation and spend.
That's suffering. Yeah.
Oh, you have no idea how bad it was. And this kid went through hell. But I'm dealing with that as well. Besides this stupid radio show and the extra after shows, which we are recording and we are taping them. I have them. I just can't. I don't know how to upload them to the website. So if anybody has any kind of experience doing that, and want to get a hold of me and help out while Christoph is on the mend, get a hold of me and help out. But don't give us a hard time about it, man. We're all trying to do this together, And any amount of money you guys can send me, trust me, I spent 10 times putting out here in doing this nonsense.
Okay, so let's do like a quick review. So if you want to help out, ways to help out, donate, become a member. Right?
The first thing is
for the Opperman Report website.
The most urgent thing right now is Dave's on his healing
Dave's
bed.
Web.
Right. DavesWeb.cnhost.com. But if you just Google Dave McGowan, and there's a donate button right there at the top. And if anybody from the group, the Weird Scenes group, or Dave's family wants to call in, we're going to be on for another hour and give us an update. That'd be great too. We'd love that. You want to help out with the show? There's free content. There's extra content. In the members section that you can sign up on OppermanReport.com.
Which is excellent, by the way, I can say.
Oh, yeah, there's good stuff in there, right? That Janansky woman?
Yeah, I know. But I feel like a little guilty because I feel like that makes the people who are complaining when there's not new stuff up there. I'm like, I think the same thing. Like, get some new stuff up there. We're just,
Here's what I got that's new. Well, let me look this up here.
It's not to bug you. It's just to
I know.
We just like the show.
How do we get it up? Do you know how to do it? I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to do it. I didn't get the password till 2 days ago.
I know someone who knows. I'll ask her in.
Get them for me. 'Cause I didn't get the password to do this till 2 days ago. I just got the passwords. Okay. But we just did an interview with Neil Sanders about mind control.
That's the one I'm dying to hear.
I know.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. It's good. Doug Valentine. That's a really good interview. Doug Valentine was the guy who wrote the book about the Phoenix program. And he actually... He got...
Is that up there?
It's not up yet. No, it's on, but I did it. I recorded it. And he loved this interview. It was one of his favorite interviews he's ever done, and he wants to come back really quick, okay? And he has...
Wait, hold on. Hold on. Are you serious?
Yeah.
I think my boyfriend can do it.
Oh, good. I have him call me tomorrow.
Oh, he said don't mention it now. Okay,
yeah.
but
have him call me tomorrow.
You have this number, right? It came up?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the number.
Douglas Valentine wrote the book about the Phoenix program, okay, and about how the CIA was extorting people down in Vietnam, and how it went on to El Salvador and goes on to this day. How these CIA agents went into drug enforcement agents. Okay, he was telling me about how he met Colby and used to visit Colby, and he has all the recordings of all these interviews with these CIA agents and Colby, and he'll make them available to us.
Oh wow!
Oh wow! Yeah, I know. Kathy Scott wrote the book about the Robert Durst murder. Okay, Neil Sanders, mind control. So we got a lot of great content up there that's about to come up. I'm going to be doing another Marilyn Monroe show, another Paul is Dead show. I got John Draper, the phone freak guy.
Yeah, what is that?
He was he used to live across the street from Yippie headquarters, and back in the 70s, he came up with a scheme. He found out that if you took the whistle that came inside a box of Captain Crunch as a toy, that you could blow it into the phone and make free phone calls with it. So he went on to do a whole bunch of crazy stuff. Yeah, I know. He's a character. And he got arrested a couple of times for some stuff. But fascinating guy.
Wow.
Oh, by the way, too, I'm being told by Ann Romney that Dave's website also is called Center for Informed America.
America, that's right.
Yeah, Center for Informed America. So you can also Google that and find it. But if you Google Dave Ramsey, it comes up right away.
Yeah, because when I was growing up, Abby Hoffman's protege lived in my house for like a year.
Oh, what was his name?
And Abby Hoffman stayed over. Al Giordano, do you know?
No, I never heard of him. No, I never met him.
Yeah, and Abby Hoffman stayed over for, it was right before, it was like a couple of years before he committed suicide.
Oh, really?
And
okay.
He had all that face work from, being on the run.
That was
so
around
he looked really different, and he also looked just really, I guess my impression as like a 12 or 13-year-old was, when you go up against the government, it takes everything out of you. He was kind of like a shell of a person. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, yeah, and I that's around the same time I met him too. It was right before the suicide, and you're right. He was broken man, and just arguing. Wanted to argue about every little thing. Just unhappy guy.
Very unhappy. Yeah, that was the vibe. He was very, very unhappy.
But still working too, man. Because when I met him, it was at a meeting of the NYPIRG, the New York Public Interest Research Group, had a fundraiser, and so he came on there and helped out with that and did like an appearance. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. My father is a writer, and he got himself elected as the only guy who didn't vote for Reagan at the Republican National Convention in '84, which is weirdly the guy sang the national anthem. Who's in the Franklin scandal? Who am I thinking? Larry King.
Yeah, Lawrence King.
Lawrence King, but the whole reason what was going on was a big fight against a pumping station pumping water to cool a nuclear power plant, and the whole town area was against it, and they were fighting Philadelphia Electric Company for years, and my mother was arrested multiple times, and it was just a big fight, and that's what he was brought in as to kind of rally the troops. So.
Okay, listen, we're gonna take a break. Okay, then we have another hour to go. We're going to be dropping PSN and dropping Talk Superstation. So, guys, thank you so much. Thank you, Angel, and thank you, Diamond Joe, for putting us on tonight. And next week we have John Potash coming on. But if you want to, we'll take a little 5-minute break. And if anybody wants to call in, 702-605-4894, 702-605-4894. Might have my daughter call in, talk about our litigation ending. That might be fun. And she has a dress for the graduation coming up.
Fantastic.
Okay, so let me play a little
Thanks so
commercial.
much. It was fun. I forgot we were on the radio.
Yeah, I know that happens, right? I never forget that because I got headphones.
Wait, call my boyfriend Tom about the uploading.
I will. Okay.
Okay.
But
All right. Bye.
okay. All right. Good night. You can call back if you want. All right. So we're gonna say goodbye to PSN and Talk Superstation. Good night, guys. We love you. Shutting off the radio one. We're still on Awake Radio, and we're going to. Make sure we're still on Awake here. I shut off the right one. Yes, we are. Okay, we're still live on awakeradio.us.uk. We're still live on TalkStream on Spreaker. So what we'll do now is we'll take a little commercial break, and we'll be right back after these messages. Okay, let's see if I can play the messages.